No other deck of cards has been surrounded by as much mystery and speculation as the tarot. It's claimed that the pack has extraordinary powers to offer advice and predict the future. And one theory speculates that it was the gypsies who brought the tarot to Europe.
The name gypsies actually derives from the name Egypt. And the gypsies were thought of as a wandering tribe of Egypt, if you like. And this is where possibly you get the later idea that a lot of the tarot and a lot of the symbols on the tarot may have an Egyptian origin. And it seems that the gypsies play a very important role in that idea.
But the earliest surviving tarot dates from about the mid-1400s, after the arrival of ordinary playing cards. It was created for the Duke of Milan, Filippo Maria Visconti, believed to be the richest man in Italy at the time.
The hand-painted decks were used by the nobility. They were extremely expensive. Each card of each deck was made individually.
Historians believe that the tarot was created to expand on the ordinary deck by adding a whole separate series of cards called triumphi, or triumphs.
The whole point about this extra suit of special cards was that they beat the ordinary cards. They were the trump suits, and that's why they were called originally triumphi.
These trumps were a set of 21 cards, each of which had some sort of symbolic picture on it. They were added to a pack of 56 ordinary playing cards, which had 4 court cards in each suit. A further picture card, known then as the Fool, brought the total number of cards in the standard tarot pack to 78. This enabled the development of more elaborate and complex games, similar to modern-day bridge.
The tarot cards, as we know them, were therefore invented for playing games with, not as many people think, for the occult and for fortune-telling.
The tarot's appeal meant it spread as rapidly across Europe as the ordinary playing card. But what made the tarot so different was the striking imagery on the trump cards.
There is a symbolism. There is something inside that the designers of the tarot early in the 15th century put. Unfortunately, we've lost the keys to understand it.
With no definitive explanation for the imagery of the tarot, there has been intense speculation about who might have created or harnessed this symbolism for their own ends.
The very mystery of the secret societies, together with the compelling symbolism of the tarot, make them a natural match. And it's not surprising that the historians and the people who follow the secret societies would fold the tarot into their legends.
One of the most enduring of these legends involves the powerful and mysterious Knights Templar, a group of elite knights formed soon after the First Crusade in the 12th century. The story goes that while in Jerusalem, they discovered the Holy Grail and other religious secrets.
And they're bringing back with them, from the Middle East, items, iconography, art, and belief systems that are completely alien to anything that we'd seen in Europe.
It's alleged that tarot cards carry Templar symbols within them.
We obviously have the Templar cross. You have the head of Baphomet. The head of Baphomet itself, many people have claimed influenced the devil card. And the Templars, of course, were accused of worshipping Baphomet.
Baphomet is a mythical figure, often represented with a goat's head. And it's claimed that the knights used it as an idol in their initiation ceremonies. When the Knights Templar were violently suppressed early in the 14th century, some believe their secrets were preserved on the tarot for future generations.
The idea of these secret groups inventing the tarot is that they invented it as a way to keep their teachings hidden and yet be able to broadcast them.
But these theories are generally dismissed by historians.
The Templars had been abolished before the tarot came along. The idea that they went underground and then used the tarot to disseminate their teachings seems very thin.
Historians believe the images on the tarot simply reflect the cultural fashions of the 15th century. Renaissance Italy was experiencing an artistic rebirth, looking back to classical knowledge and learning for inspiration.
The Renaissance was a time when a lot of different streams of thought flowed together. Alchemy, astrology, the Jewish Kabbalah was adapted by Renaissance philosophers. The symbols of the tarot were fairly well known. To a Renaissance person, even an ordinary person who wasn't educated, they would have been familiar and understandable.
This symbolism may have been obvious to a Renaissance person, but to modern eyes, many of the images seem a very strange choice.
It's quite mysterious why the artist would have chosen to put the skeleton of death in a deck that's supposed to be for fun and gaming.
In addition to the skeleton of death, there were other sinister and mysterious images in the tarot deck. The Burning Tower, the Devil, and the Hanged Man. But this was certainly a well-known Italian image. If someone was shown hanging upside down by the foot, it meant they were accused of being a traitor to the state. Others suggest the meanings are more fundamental, that they are archetypes that have been handed down and just slightly reinterpreted according to the culture of the time.
Behind the obvious overt image, there is the message, the meaning of the card, and that is essentially unchanged. They are dealing with the same stuff, and that stuff is the stuff of human consciousness and the way we react to the world in which we are born.
They would have images that explained concepts such as vanity, death, love, fortune.
But despite their elaborate design, it appears that the tarot cards were mainly used in ordinary games similar to modern-day bridge. Then in the 18th century, the tarot was given a dramatically different interpretation.
People started to discover fortune-telling with cards. And tarot cards, obviously, offer more pictures, more clues to fortune-telling. It truly became extremely popular with card readers and also cultists.
It's just a natural that people would pick it up and start seeing fortune-telling in it.
The key man behind the use of the tarot to tell fortunes was an 18th century former seed seller from Paris called Aliette. He decided to reverse his name to make it seem more mysterious. Atea, as he was now called, established himself as one of the first and most influential professional fortune tellers.
He created what he called a corrected tarot, which he claimed was true to the original tarot that was supposedly from ancient Egypt.
Atea assigned several meanings to each tarot card. The Devil card, which he called force majeure, could mean extraordinary power or strength, but reversed, it could signal weakness or pettiness. Placed in certain positions in a tarot deal or spread, each card took on a new significance, showing the obstacles existing in life, hopes and fears, and even what was to happen in the future. Atea's fortune-telling technique was a major influence on the practitioners who followed, and his tarot deck is still in use today. But in many ways, fortune-telling was just the tip of the iceberg. The tarot had also caught the attention of devotees of the occult, who saw something else altogether in the mysterious symbolism of the cards. Today, the tarot has a notorious association with the occult and fortune-telling, but its popularity began just as a trick-playing card game. Then in the late 18th century, two scholars in France, Antoine Coeur de Gébelin and the Comte de Melay, tried to read the tarot and understand its symbolism and history.
Comte de Gébelin was a French Mason of the late 18th century. And he's the one who really threw tarot into the occult mix.
His interpretation of the tarot was heavily influenced by his fascination with ancient Egypt.
He wrote a book in which he claimed that the tarot was the Book of Thoth, which had been rescued from the burning library of Alexandria and kept secretly until suddenly it emerged as the tarot.
The Book of Thoth, according to Egyptian mythology, is the book of the god of wisdom, containing the source of all knowledge.
There's no actual proof that this is the case, of course, but there is some suggestion that there may be an indirect influence through Egypt, through Judaism, into Kabbalah.
De Gebelin's idea of the tarot being an occult book was quickly taken up by other French occultists, like the writer Eliphas Levi, who pursued the suggestion that the 22 tarot trumps related to the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Levi believed that studying the tarot would reveal the ancient wisdom of the Kabbalah.
It does portray a sequence of 22 pictorial images which deal with human archetypes, which deal with the human condition. There is every possibility that it is an encapsulation of ancient knowledge, that it's an arc to carry information through the ages in a relatively inconsequential card game that would survive perhaps the ungentle attentions of the established church. Or, alternatively, it may simply be an inconsequential card game to which an accretion of meaning has gathered over the last several hundred years.
But the possibility that the tarot might provide the key, not only to understanding the past, but also to predicting the future, made it extremely seductive. During the 18th and 19th centuries, this interpretation of the tarot spread rapidly across Europe. In England, influential occultists began to design their own decks.
Arthur Edward Waite is probably the most well-known tarotist of the 20th century. One of the innovations that he gave to the tarot was featuring illustrations on all of the cards, not just on the quartz and the trumps, but also on the numbered cards, so that you can pick up each card of the deck and recognize the image.
Arthur Edward Waite's version of the tarot went on to become the preeminent deck in the world and was the inspiration for many others. Aleister Crowley, a one-time student of Waite, created his own special deck.
His designs are still radical, revolutionary, redefined what tarot is. And it was done from a position of mastery of the subject.
Aleister Crowley worked with the painter Frieda Harris to create a highly original occult tarot. The deck itself took 5 years to paint.
The Crowley deck has a completely different mood about it. It's much more brooding and mysterious. It's much more complicated. Some people find it actually kind of creepy or disturbing.
It's powerful, so it will disturb. If it didn't disturb, it wouldn't really have a great deal of value. You could say the same thing about filmmaking or pieces of music or pieces of literature. If it doesn't affect you in one way or another, then it's kind of failed in its job, rather.
Through 20th century occultists like Waite and Crowley, the tarot became more accessible, attracting a much wider audience.
The idea of the uninitiated coming into the tarot is something actually that Crowley and Waite intended. That was the intention behind their decks. At the same time, you still had to have a certain amount of vision, I suppose, in order to see what they actually meant.
Today, many different occultists use the tarot as a way to broaden and further the study of their own spiritual traditions.
They use them for a variety of different purposes, largely for divination, but often as the meditation aids, means of access to different states of consciousness. Each group will probably have its own very specific ideas on how to use them and its own preferred pack.